68 districts of Oromia region, adding that about 629,000 people with symptoms were tested in the past 3 months, of whom 131,511 were tested positive when compared to the first quarter of last year. According to Mr. Oromia, the Health Bureau indicates inadequate preparation of government bodies and health sector for the prevention of malaria, following very low number of cases in recent years. Public negligence and lack of sanitation in urban areas, among others, are some of the factors increasing the spread of malaria. In addition, he said the Oromia Health Bureau is currently working with the Ministry of Health and other organizations to prevent the transmission of the disease. Moroccan Foreign Minister Mr. Nasser Bourita has arrived for a preparatory meeting before the beginning of the Arab Summit in Algiers. Algeria is hosting the 31st summit of the largest annual Arab conference today and tomorrow, as the region battles to find common ground over a series of divisive issues. The 22-member Arab League last held its summit in 2019 before the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. Report says new challenges have drastically reshaped the region's agenda, with the establishment of diplomatic ties between Israel and 4 more Arab League countries, as well as the fallout of the war in Ukraine. The event is expected to provide an opportunity for Africa's largest country by territory to showcase its leadership in the Arab world. Algeria is a major oil and gas producer and is perceived by European nations as a key supplier amid the global energy crisis. Information has it that chief among the summit's discussion will likely be the food and energy crisis aggravated by the conflict in Eastern Europe. The crisis has had devastating consequences for Egypt, Lebanon, and Tunisia, among other Arab countries struggling to import enough wheat and fuel to satisfy their population. This is the World at Noon, coming to you from Osun State Broadcasting Corporation, Voice of the West, Nigeria. Now, our mid-news message. It is only when everyone works hard that Nigeria can record a sustainable growth. Contribute your quota. North Korea's foreign ministry has criticized the United States for the expanding joint military exercises with South Korea that it claims are practiced for potential invasion, and its want of more powerful follow-up measures in response. A statement from the ministry came as the U.S. and South Korea conduct area drills involving more than 200 warplanes, including their advanced F-37 fighter jets, as they step up their defense posture in the face of North Korea's increased weapons testing and growing nuclear threat. North Korea has ramped up its weapon demonstrations to a record pace this year, launching more than 40 ballistic missiles, including developmental intercontinental ballistic missiles and an intermediate-range missile fired over Japan. The North has punctuated those tests with an escalatory nuclear doctrine that authorizes preemptive nuclear attacks in loosely defined crisis situations. U.S. and South Korea have resumed large-scale military drills this year after downsizing or suspending them in past years as part of efforts to create diplomatic space with Pyongyang and because of the pandemic. Iranians have staged new protest actions to denounce the country's theocratic regime in defiance of a crackdown that is now seeing those arrested put on trial and facing death penalty. Iran has for the past 6 weeks been rocked by protests of a scale and nature unprecedented since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, sparked by the deaths in September of Mahsa Amini, who had been arrested by the Tehran morality police. Authorities have warned protesters that it is time to leave the streets, but the demonstrations have shown no sign of abating, taking place in residential areas, major avenues, and universities nationwide. The protests were fueled by anger over the strict Islamic dress code for women in Iran, which the police who arrested Amini were enforcing, but have become a rallying point for popular anger against the regime that has ruled Iran since the fall of the Shah in 1979. Meanwhile, there have been outbursts of protests in Iran over the past 2 decades, when the current movement has regularly broken taboos. And here again are the highlights of the world at noon. In Nigeria, China Harbour Engineering Company Limited, CHEC, has handed over Nigeria's first deep-sea port to the government after the completion of the huge maritime project in the country's economic hub city of Lagos. The deputy head of the Oromia Health Bureau in Ethiopia, Abera Botore, has announced that 37 people have died and more than 131,000 have been infected with malaria in the past 3 months. The Iranians have staged new protest actions to denounce the country's theocratic regime in defiance of a crackdown that is now seeing those arrested put on trial and facing death penalty. That was the world at noon, as packaged by Nathaniel Ojegoke and delivered by Olushayo Babatunde. The news talk by Adeboye Popola looks at the security challenges of the month of November and calls on security agencies and Nigerians in general to be security conscious by avoiding any high-risk security threats activities.
November, the 11th month of the year, is uniquely important for being a penultimate month to the new year. It is the month when the dry season eclipses the rainy season. For a global climatic change, November therefore is a month of new season and dramatic changes. The changes in November are quite physical, being the era for the tree to start shedding the old leaves in preparation for sprouting new ones, and branches to reinvigorate for another turbulent rainy season. November is also notable as a gateway for Harmattan, the dry and dusty northeastern trade wind which blows from the Sahara over west and into the Gulf of